Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Pennsylvania Game Commission for our Learn to Hunt Deer Firearms program. My name is Courtney, and I will be managing the program today. The program is about an hour in length and will be followed by a short question and answer session. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone can hear us. Please let us know you can hear us by typing into the Questions tab found on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send us questions at any point in time during the program by typing into the Questions tab. We have a lot of people attending today, so we may not be able to get to everyone's question. If we don't get to your question tonight or today, don't worry, we'll be sending a follow-up email with answers to any missed questions, a link to a recording of today's program, and any additional resources we think might be able to help you out. So I'm going to go through here and see. It looks like you guys can hear me, so that is great. So today's program will be given by Courtney Bronze, our hunting and trapping R3 specialist with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And when Courtney is ready, we can get started.
All right, so we're going to go over all the basics you'll need to learn how to hunt deer with a firearm. So if there's anything that I don't cover or you have any questions pop up while I'm going over something, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So this year, the statewide regular firearms season for antlered and antlerless deer begins on November 26th, and it runs through December 10th. There's also a special firearms season statewide, and that runs from October 20th to October 22nd. And during that special season, junior and senior license holders, mentored youth, active duty military, and certain disabled permit holders were able to harvest an antlerless deer with a firearm. There's also an extended firearm season for antlerless deer and wildlife management units 2B, 5C, and 5D. 2B is in the Pittsburgh area. 5C and 5D are both in the Philadelphia area. You want to make sure that you check your digest for those exact boundaries of those wildlife management units. But that season runs from December 26th through January 28th. So a general hunting license is required to hunt in any of the seasons. And with that general hunting license, you can only take one antlered deer or buck per license year. Statewide, junior license holders, mentored youth, disabled hunters with a permit to use a vehicle, and resident active duty U.S. Armed Service personnel can harvest antlered deer with 2 or more points on one antler, or they can also harvest a spike that is 3 or more inches in length. So for all other hunters, there are some additional antler restrictions. Senior license holders are required to abide by these as well. So I just want to go over some of the definitions. A point is defined as any antler projection, including the brow tine, at least 1 inch in length from base to tip. So that point has to be at least 1 inch in length to be considered a point. And then the brow tine is the point immediately above the antler burr. So it's that first point immediately above where the antlers come out of the deer's head. And then the main beam tip is counted as a point regardless of its length. And antlerless deer will remain defined as a deer without antlers or a deer with antlers, both of which are less than 3 inches in length. So if a deer has antlers that are less than 3 inches in length, they are classified as antlerless. In most parts of the state, hunters are required to abide by 3 points on one side. So you can see in the picture here, that buck has 3 points on at least one side, including his brow tine. So in WMUs 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and 2D, hunters are required to abide by 3 up. And this means that the deer has to have 3 points, including the main beam, on one side, excluding the brow tine. So you can find more information on antler restrictions on page 26 of the 2022-23 Hunting and Trapping Digest. And if you plan to harvest antlerless deer, you're also going to need an antlerless tag in addition to a general hunting license. There is an application process for those, but if you're looking to purchase an antlerless tag for this license year, there may still be some available in your unit, and you can check that availability at huntfish.pa.gov. You want to make sure that you harvest antlerless deer only in the unit where your antlerless tag is valid. You can use your antlered or buck tag anywhere in the state, but the antlerless tags are restricted to the WMU that they're issued for. And a bill was recently passed in Pennsylvania that will likely change the way antlerless tags can be purchased in upcoming years. So you can watch for press releases, social media posts, and check the website in upcoming months for more information. There are also DMAP tags that can be purchased each year. So DMAP stands for Deer Management Assistance Program. And these permits allow for hunters to harvest an antlerless deer on a specific property for which the permit is issued. So if you're interested in those, you can find more information on page 30 of the Hunting and Trapping Digest. So if you're planning to hunt deer with a rifle, you're going to find a wide variety to choose from. And when using a rifle, you typically want to remember the higher the caliber, the bigger the bullet. So just some popular ones are the 243, 308, 30-06, 7mm, 270. All of those calibers are suitable for deer. Personally, I prefer to use a 243 or a 30-06. And you definitely want to make sure that you take ammunition availability into consideration when you're choosing your caliber. Once you choose your caliber, you want to consider the type of action you prefer. So you have a couple different kinds you can choose from. So this is the bolt action. It's probably the most popular choice among deer hunters. It operates like opening and closing a door bolt. They hold multiple cartridges in the magazine, so they're great if you need to make a follow-up shot. The lever action is another popular choice. You can find these in more modern variations that are chambered for more powerful cartridges like 30-06. You can also find traditional rifles that are chambered for lower pressure cartridges like the 30-30. In the more traditional calibers, the effective range is typically less than that of the more powerful cartridges. This makes the lever action a favorite for hunters hunting in thick cover where you don't really need to take long shots. The last action you have to consider is a single shot or hinge action. So just like the name implies, these rifles only hold one shot. They're typically lighter than bolt action or lever action rifles, and they're a really great choice for anyone that's mentoring a new hunter. They break open easily. It's easy to load and unload them. So if you're considering mentoring, I would recommend a single shot or hinge action. So when choosing your rifle, you also need to make sure that it's a good fit. A rifle that doesn't fit you correctly is going to be uncomfortable when you shoot it, and it can also make it unsafe. So stock length is important. Companies make rifles in all different types of stock lengths. There's youth model, regular, women's models. So just make sure when you're picking it out that it fits you well. And I also recommend when you're evaluating the fit, keep in mind that during rifle season, it's typically cold out. You're probably going to be wearing layers and a jacket when you're hunting. So maybe when you go to try that gun out, take a jacket with you. And then when you're rifle hunting, odds are a lot of your shots are going to be further away. So you're going to want to have a scope mounted on your firearm. There's a lot of different options to choose from. Honestly, we could probably do an entire presentation just on optics. But if you talk to someone at your local sporting goods store, able to point you in the right direction based on your needs and budget. So once you have a rifle and a scope, you're going to need to find ammo for it, and you want to ensure that you have the right caliber ammo, and then you want to consider the weight of the bullet. So heavier bullets increase accuracy downrange while they maintain velocity, and lighter bullets are going to travel faster and flatter. So basically this means that a lighter bullet generally creates more expansion because of the fast speed it travels at, but it offers less penetration. Whereas a heavier bullet travels slower, creating less violent expansion than a light bullet, and this maximizes the penetration. And again, this is really a topic that we could spend a lot of time discussing. I would recommend consulting with the salesperson at your local ammo store or even an experienced hunter when selecting ammo for your rifle. So during firearm deer season, a minimum of 250 square inches of blaze orange is required on the head, chest, and back combined, and it needs to be visible 360 degrees. When fluorescent orange is required, the full amount of orange for that season must be worn while moving from 1 hour prior to the start of legal hunting hours and for 1 hour past the closing of legal hunting hours. So really, anytime you're in the woods during the firearms season, make sure that you have that orange on. Also, just a side note, camouflage orange is legal in Pennsylvania, but the orange content needs to be at least 250 square inches. Also, if you're hunting from a blind or an enclosed tree stand, a minimum of 100 square inches of fluorescent orange must be displayed within 15 feet of a blind or enclosed tree stand and visible 360 degrees. An orange alert band on a tree would work. Also, they make orange caps for ground blinds or little orange squares like you see here. And you also need to keep your blaze orange on while you're in the blind or tree stand. So when it comes to gear for hunting, there's hundreds of items out there, a lot of different things you can buy. And really, I just want to go over some of the basics that I would recommend for rifle season. So since it is late November into early December, you're going to want to make sure you have warm clothes and warm waterproof hunting boots. So the last thing you want is your feet getting cold. So once they're cold, the rest of you is going to get cold really quick. I recommend dressing in layers so that you're able to adjust accordingly throughout the day. You're also going to want warm gloves. Hot hands are a really great thing to have when it's cold out. They're cheap, they're effective. They also make foot warmers, large warming packs, and they even make like big sticky pads that you can put anywhere on your clothing that warm up. You're going to want a knife just in case you need to field dress a deer, a drag rope or deer cart or some other means to get the deer out of the woods, a flashlight, a pack for all of your gear, binoculars, since sometimes shots in rifle season are going to be further away, and you also want a lens wipe to keep your scope clean and dry. Another good thing to have is some form of scent control. So when it comes to scent control, you really have a lot of different options. The most cost-effective method is using scent eliminating clothing spray. So you just spray that on yourself or on your clothes ahead of time. They also make laundry detergent. There's dryer sheets, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, hairspray, all kinds of things. They also make ozone scent control bags and lockers, like you see on the left here, and ozone vehicle plugs to eliminate any scents from your vehicle. So when it comes to hunting deer with a firearm, there's a few different tactics that you can use. The first tactic I want to cover is hunting from a tree stand. So there's a lot of different options of tree stands that you can pick as well. So this one on the screen here is a ladder stand. They're a really popular choice. However, they're really heavy. They typically require 2 to 3 people to set one up. And since they are so heavy, they're good for spots where you know you're going to be hunting there for the entire season. So I would recommend putting them in areas that you scouted really well. You know there's a lot of deer movement, because if you get in there and realize you want to move it, it's pretty time consuming to have to move it around again. Hang-on stands are also a great option. So the ladder for the stand comes in segments, and then you secure it to the tree with straps. And then the platform is also secured with straps. They do shift around, so it's important to check the straps every time you use it. They are light, they're easy to move, so they're a good option in areas where you might not want to hunt it long term. If you want to be really mobile, climbers are a great option. So it consists of 2 parts that wrap around the tree, and you essentially use those 2 parts to climb yourself up the tree. They do take a little longer to get in and out of the tree because you have to climb up and down each time. But personally, these are my favorite because sometimes I like to move around spots a lot, and often I hunt by myself. Enclosed stands are also an option. These are nice when it's really cold out. They provide a warm, dry hunting experience. They come in portable options. They can also be permanently built on private land. And we're going to talk more about the regulations for tree stands and blinds on public land in a couple slides. But if you are constructing your own stand, we recommend using a platform as opposed to nailing directly into trees. So not only does this cause damage to the tree, but those platforms can also shift as the nails become loose in the tree, causing the stand to be unsafe to use. So regardless of what type of tree stand you do choose, anytime you're hunting from an elevated platform, you need to make sure that you wear a safety harness. Anytime that both feet are not on the ground, you should be strapped to the tree. That way, if something happens and you were to accidentally slip and fall, you can easily recover yourself. You also need to make sure that you have a haul rope to raise and lower your gear. So you never want to be climbing with anything in your hands or on your back. It's really easy to slip with something in your hands or that extra weight on you. And then when you're hoisting your rifle, you want to make sure it's unloaded and the muzzle is pointed towards the ground, away from you. If you don't want to hunt out of a tree stand and you prefer to hunt on the ground instead, ground blinds are a great option for cover. They're also awesome for areas where you can't easily get a tree stand into. And you just want to make sure that you blend your blind into the surrounding area and just try to make it appear as natural as possible. Sometimes you can use some branches in front of it to kind of blend it in, or set it back in a tree line on the edge of a field. Just try and break it up a little bit. So when you are using a tree stand or blind, there are some regulations that need to be followed. So on public land, you cannot damage any tree by constructing a tree stand or using a portable tree stand or device to climb a tree. So you just need to make sure that you're not causing damage to that tree in any way. And you can also not use or occupy a tree stand that, when constructed, damages a tree. This doesn't apply to landowners constructing stands on their own property or people who have received written permission from a landowner to build or use a tree stand. Tree stands and portable hunting blinds on state game lands can be placed out no more than 2 weeks before the first season, and you have to remove those no later than 2 weeks after the final season. So placing a tree stand or blind on public land does not reserve that area for that hunter, so others can still hunt there. If you go to an area and another hunter has a stand there, it's good etiquette to try and maybe find a different place to put your stand, or if you really want to hunt that area, maybe reach out to that hunter and figure out how you can both hunt it respectfully. And then tree stands and portable hunting blinds left on state game lands and other hunter access properties under PGC management need to be marked with a durable and legible identification tag, and that needs to include the owner's first and last name, home address, or the CID number of the owner. So when you're looking for a place to put your stand or blind, this time of year you really want to focus on food sources. You want to look for acorns that are remaining, or even crops such as winter wheat or clover. In your areas with little pressure, the deer are typically going to move the most during the early morning hours and late afternoon into the evening. But in areas where there's a lot of hunters in the woods, those deer are going to move around all day. So placing your stand in natural funnels or those areas where deer move through naturally can be good. Personally, I recommend staying in your stand daylight to dark at least the first couple days of rifle season, and even those busier days like the Saturday in the middle of season. So there's a lot of hunters moving around, and it gets the deer up and moving more than usual. And I've found that lunchtime, when other hunters are going in for a break to warm up and get something to eat, that can actually be the best time to harvest a deer if you're still in your stand. Another option you have is driving deer. So for those that might not know, driving means using drivers or hunters walking through the woods to push game to hunters waiting on the other side. Drives are a big tradition here in Pennsylvania, but they can also be very dangerous if they're not done safely. So if you're driving, you want to make sure that you plan it out well. You want to make sure that the drive members know where to be, and you want to make sure that they're aware of where the watchers are. You also want to make sure that the watchers stay in their assigned place. All members of that drive really need to communicate with each other, and two-way radios are a great way to do this. You really want to make sure you think before you shoot and know your safe zones of fire, and never swing your firearm on game that comes back through that line of drivers. It's actually a good idea to consider conducting drives that limit the taking of game to those designated as watchers, so only the standers on that drive are able to shoot. You want to make sure that you're wearing at least 250 square inches of blaze orange. More is recommended. And regulations state that no more than 25 hunters can participate in a drive at a time. And if you're looking for a little bit more of an advanced tactic when deer hunting, it requires you to spot the animal you're hunting from a distance and then quietly sneak up on that animal. So when you're trying to spot a deer, you typically want to be at a higher elevation than the animal. If there's snow cover on the ground, you can also look for fresh tracks. And then if you're stalking an animal, you want to walk quietly. You want to make sure you're stopping often and looking around you. And you always want to be ready for a shot that may present itself, but you also want to make sure that you clearly identify your target before taking that shot. You also want to be mindful of wind direction. So you want to try to stay downwind of the animal so that they don't smell you before you see them. I also recommend dressing lightly. The heavier you dress, the more noise you're going to make, and you'll also get warm quickly moving around. So now I just want to take a minute and recap on some important safety tips to keep in mind, no matter what method you choose. So you want to consider wearing more than the 250 square inches of blaze orange that is required. It's not going to affect how many deer you see. You want to read all of the regulations in the Hunting and Trapping Digest prior to going hunting. You really want to make sure that you choose safe hunting partners. You want to make sure that they know the rules and regulations, and if you see them doing something unsafe, politely correct them. You want to make sure that someone knows where you are and what your plan is. That way, if you don't come out of the woods when you said you would, they know that they can come look for you. Also, it's a good idea to keep some type of communication device with you at all times. If you're in an area that doesn't have cell service, I recommend carrying a radio. And honestly, it's a good idea to have both because cell phones can die, you can drop them out of a tree stand, so having a backup option is always good. You always want to wear your safety harness anytime you don't have both feet on the ground, and always use a haul rope to get your rifle and equipment into the stand. You really want to make sure that you're clearly identifying your target before taking your shot. And you want to be comfortable and familiar with your firearm. Always keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction and keep that safety on at all times until you're ready to take your shot. The rut is typically in the end stages when rifle season comes in Pennsylvania. Calls typically do still work, especially during the early parts of season. So you can rattle. This simulates two bucks fighting. You can do that with real antlers. They make synthetic ones like the ones in the picture. They also make small little rattle bags that have sticks that you can rub together that make the same sound. A grunt tube simulates the grunt that bucks make when they're communicating with each other as a challenge. And then you can also use a bleat call that mimics the sound of a doe that's ready to be. So when you're ready to make a shot on the deer, it's important to know the deer anatomy. And something you want to pay close attention to is the placement of the front shoulder blade. It's ideal to have that front leg in a forward position when taking your shot to ensure that the vital area is completely exposed. This also makes sure that you don't hit that bone and end up with bone fragments in your meat. So that vital area is comprised of 3 organs: the heart, the lungs, and the liver. Most people think that the brain is a vital organ, and while it may be vital, it's never good to try a headshot. So a deer's brain is about the size of your fist, and if you miss this area, you stand the chance of injuring the deer with a non-fatal hit. So try to limit your shots to those vital areas behind the front shoulder. The broadside angle is one of the best possible positions to shoot a deer in. So your point of aim is right behind the front leg. And like I said, it's best to take that shot when that front leg's in a forward position. Quartering away is another great shot angle. It's good for hitting the lungs and heart as long as the deer is not quartering away too much. And then when a deer is quartering towards you, you want to avoid taking those shots. The front shoulder is exposed, that vital area is partially covered by bone, and chances of cleanly penetrating that vital area are pretty small. Same with a deer walking straight towards you. There's a lot of room for error with this shot. Often it leads to a wounded deer that's not recovered. And then you never ever want to take a shot at a deer that's walking away from you. This is going to result in a gut shot almost 100% of the time, and likely you chance losing that animal. It's also never safe to take a shot when you're unsure what's beyond your target. So bullets can travel a long ways. If that deer is on a horizon and you can't directly see what's behind it, don't take the shot. So if you're successful, the first thing you need to do when you recover your harvest is to tag the animal. So to do that, you detach the harvest tag from your license, you fill it out using a ballpoint pen, and then you securely attach it to the deer's ear. I recommend carrying zip ties to attach it. And then the new green harvest tags have boxes with months and date numbers on the back of them. So you have to cut the correct month and day into the tag. And you need to make sure that the animal is tagged before the carcass is moved. Once tagged, you want to get that animal field dressed as soon as possible, especially if the weather is warmer. And we're going to send out a link to huntered.com. They have great step-by-step directions for field dressing an animal. Those are provided courtesy of Penn State University College of Ag Science. So they use a 12-step process. It isn't the end-all, be-all way to do it. There's several variations, but it's a really starting point. So for getting your deer out of the woods, I always recommend the buddy system first. So if you know you're going hunting, maybe talk to a couple friends, have a plan in place if you get something. They also make drag ropes and different variations of carts and sleds you can use. But it's always good to have a plan in place ahead of going out in the field. Once you have the animal recovered, you want to keep in mind that it needs to be reported to the Game Commission within 10 days. So there's a postage paid report in the Hunting and Trapping Digest. You can also make that report online or over the phone. And if you need more information on how to do that, you can see page 22 of the digest. If you harvest a deer and don't want or need the meat, you're also able to donate it to Hunters Sharing the Harvest for no cost. So if you're interested in doing that, you can find an approved processor by visiting the Hunters Sharing the Harvest website. It's www.sharedeer.org, or you can call 866-474-2141, and they can help you out. So with that, I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have a question that you don't think of during this session or we don't get to it, you can feel free to reach out to us at mentoredhunting@pa.gov.
Okay, everybody, we're going to start taking questions. Courtney will be assisted by Bob D'Angelo, who is our Game News Senior Associate Editor, to answer questions today. Once again, you can send questions at any point in time here by typing into the questions tab. And we did have a lot of people register for this event, so we may not be able to get to everybody's questions right now. If we don't get to your question, we will try to send a follow-up email with answering your questions. I do know that I have a couple people in here asking if we can send the link for the processing. The follow-up email that we will send to all of you will have links to those processing and field dressing materials. Okay, so the first question that we got is if shotguns are permitted during the firearms regular season.
Yes, shotguns can be used. You need to make sure you have single projectile ammunition. Buckshot is no longer legal to use in shotguns in the state.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Another question that we got is, do citizens who are not hunting on public lands during hunting season have to wear fluorescent orange? So I was going to go ahead and kind of hop on that one. The answer is yes and no. So it kind of depends on what public lands you are on. So we have state game lands and we have state forest lands, we have state parks. On state game lands from November 15th to December 15th, anyone on state game lands is required to wear 250 square inches of fluorescent orange covering their head, their chest, and their back. Okay, so that is a legal requirement for you to be on state game lands from, again, November 15th to December 15th. If you're on state forest lands or state parks, those regulations may vary a little bit. However, if you are out on public lands during hunting season, we would highly recommend that you wear orange. It's just a safety precaution. It helps to make sure that you are seen when you are out there. So we would highly recommend that. Courtney or Bob, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. Just like I say, it's very important when you're out on game lands to be aware, of other hunters using those lands as well. and just protect yourself and wear as much orange as you can.
Okay, so another question that we got from Philip is, are any rifle calibers prohibited?
Yes, you must use centerfire rifle calibers for deer hunting in the state. Something like rimfires, like 22s, they're used for small game hunting. They're not permitted for big game hunting.
Okay. Okay, so that answered 2 of the questions here. Ooh, this is a good question. Where can we find a list of deer processors nearby where we live? How do you find processors, guys?
You can, best way probably is to Google it. Google deer processors. You'll get a list, or a list will come up.
Yeah, I would also say that so deer processors are not under any type of state authority or state regulation. So anybody can become a deer processor. So we don't really have like a collective list of all of the processors in the state. So like Bob had noted, that sometimes Googling is the best way to find out where a processor is. Another way is just asking other hunters in the local area. A lot of times somebody will know of somebody that you can go and take your deer and get it processed. And then also, this would only work if you're in one of our disease management areas, but we typically have a running list of what we call cooperating processors. And all that means is that those processors have agreed to help pull CWD samples for us in those local areas. There is a list of those cooperating processors on our website. So if you're within a disease management area, that might be an easy way to locate a processor near you.
Also, local newspapers, especially in the fall, will often list deer processing services.
Okay. Yes, and okay, so I'm seeing here another question that I got. Um, this is kind of following up on that rifle caliber question from before, Bob. Is there a minimum centerfire caliber that you can use?
23. Yes, 23 caliber and up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, George asks, are self-defense handguns allowed to be carried in wildlife management areas? So can you carry a self-defense handgun?
Yes, you can, as long as you have your concealed carry permit.
Okay, perfect. Ooh, so Sawyer asks, what rangefinder do you recommend?
Boy, there's a lot of good ones out there. Notable manufacturers, I personally like Leupold. Same thing with rifle scopes and things. But Bushnell, Tasco, there's quite a few out there, and they're all fairly good.
It depends a lot too. They make some for shorter ranges. They also make, long distance rangefinders as well. So it depends, I guess, the distance that you intend to hunt at.
Yeah, I would say that just as like a Sawyer for my thing, I take a rangefinder out with me for archery season. I really don't typically take one out whenever I'm going out for firearms. But during archery season, I actually just use my husband's rangefinder that he uses for golfing. And I believe that's a Vortex. So I figured if it's good enough for golfing, it will work for hunting. Um, okay, let me see here. Make sure I don't forget any questions. So I wanted to, oh, got another one just came in. But I'm going to go ahead and ask this one question too while I'm already on it. Courtney, you mentioned a couple of different types of calls that people can use whenever they're out during deer season to help kind of bring deer towards them or get some deer's interest. Where can somebody learn how to actually use those calls? Do you have any recommendations on that?
There's a lot of good videos out there on YouTube, or a lot of the makers of those calls will also post videos.
Also, just read the instructions on the packaging for whatever product you choose. That'll give you a good head start with learning how to call.
Or even don't be afraid to ask an experienced hunter too. You know, I'm sure they'd be willing to teach you as well.
And just practice at home before you get out there. I mean, just give it a try and learn how it sounds. And like use the promotional material that comes with the calls.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to answer some questions here really quickly. So I got another question about carrying when you are hunting. Can you open carry those handguns while hunting? Something such as a OWB holster or a drop leg holster?
As long as you have the permit to carry, you can open carry.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Are calls allowed on public game lands?
Absolutely.
I just want to note you cannot use electronic calls in deer season, though. They have to be, you know, like rattling antlers or grunt tubes, doe bleats, that type of thing.
Thank you for that clarification, Courtney, because that's really important to know. We don't want anybody getting in trouble for using an electronic call. Okay, do we have any other, oh, there we go. He says, George is asking if we can go back over the antler restrictions. Courtney, can you give a
Sure.
brief overview of that just one more time?
Yes, so in most parts of the state, your deer has to be 3 points. You can include the brow tine on one side. However, in wildlife management units 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and 2D, hunters are required to abide by 3 up. So that means that that deer has to have 3 points up on the antler, not including his brow tine.
And those 3 up areas are in the generally in the western part of the state.
So
Okay. Oh,
Those
go ahead, guys.
WMUs in the western part.
Okay, so we got a question that if we harvest a deer that looks like it might be in questionable shape or diseased, who would we report that to or how is it handled? So the first thing that I would like to point out is that if you are prior to, you know, pulling that trigger, if the deer that you or any game you're looking at looks like it may be sick, we wouldn't recommend you harvesting that. You can report sick or diseased animals either to 1833 PGC Wild or to 1833 PGC Hunt. If you do happen to harvest a deer and you get up to it, you didn't realize it before, you know, find your harvest and it looks really questionable, we would definitely recommend that you call that in and to have a game warden come out and take a look at your deer. Again, that is 1833 PGC Hunt. Okay, if your deer is really sick or they just don't think that it is fit for consumption, there is a possibility that they might give you a replacement tag as long as you have enough season left that you could go out and harvest another deer. Bob or Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just if you shoot a deer that you feel is, unfit for consumption, like Courtney had said, you just call in and get a dispatcher. They'll get a hold of the region who will dispatch a officer to your location. And if it looks bad, just don't. If deer looks funny or something, just don't take the shot. Don't harvest that animal.
Perfect, thank you. Courtney, can you talk about scouting on state game lands?
Sure. So when you're scouting on state game lands, you're going to want to look for those areas that have a lot of deer sign. Like I had mentioned, during rifle season, it's the time of year where you're going to want to look for food sources. You're going to look for acorns or other types of hard mast that they may be eating. You also want to look for funnels or pinch points in those areas. So areas that the deer are going to naturally travel to avoid being seen are good places to hunt. And honestly, on game lands and rifle season, there's typically a lot of people out moving around. So those deer could be running anywhere in season.
Yeah, I like to look for, like Courtney had mentioned, pinch points, funnel areas. Particular spot I hunted in the western part of the state was like behind a ridge of a funnel area that I wouldn't see deer till between 11 or 2. By the time hunters, particularly opening day, start moving deer. Hedgerows in between fields, that's a good spot to scout and look for because deer will head to that cover as soon as hunters start moving into the woods, especially on opening day.
Okay. And what is a good time to start scouting?
Well before the season, you should have several locations scouted where you want to try. I like to get in there before the season, look for food sources and that type of thing, and particularly find those funnel areas, places that look good. You could also examine topographical maps and find a lot of these thick cover areas and pinch points.
Okay.
I would recommend too, if you were to start scouting now for the rifle season, just be mindful of other hunters in the woods during archery, maybe doing that scouting on Sundays or, midday as opposed to first thing in the morning or in evenings.
That's a good point. Keep in mind too that food sources are going to change. If you start scouting in the summer or late summer, that food sources can and will change. So you want to do it, relatively close to the hunting seasons when you're going to be out there.
Okay. Hold on, guys. I'm getting a whole bunch coming in here really quickly.
Oh.
So Sean has a good question. Are there certain restrictions on rifles in different areas of the state? So that answer to that is yes. So you have to be aware of where you are hunting, what WMA you're hunting in, and what area you're hunting in. We do have areas that are called special regulations areas in the state, and they include Western Pennsylvania and specifically all of Allegheny County. We also have some special regulation areas in southeastern Pennsylvania, which includes Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia counties. So if you are in those areas, there are specific regulations for arms and ammunition that you need to follow. And it does vary from one area to other. So for example, in Philadelphia County, you can only use bows and arrows, including crossbows. So you cannot use a firearm in Philadelphia County. So all of those regulations pertaining to arms and ammunitions for special regulations areas is on page 31 of your Hunting and Trapping Digest. So I would highly recommend you figure out what area you're going to be hunting in, and then refer to that page to figure out the specific regulations in that area. But that's a really good question. Wait, hold on. Okay. Can blinds be left on state game lands?
So those blinds have to be up or can be put up 2 weeks before the start of the deer season, and they need to be removed within 2 weeks after the end of the deer season. You can leave them up during the seasons.
Thank you, Courtney. And then we also got a question about tree stands. Do you need something covering you or be up? Oh, okay. So I get it. Sorry, Sawyer here. Do you need something covering you or do you need to be up in a tree stand? So I don't think you need it, but it definitely helps you. Courtney, do you want to talk about maybe blinds and tree stands and
Yeah, I
what
mean, you don't,
you
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need a blind or tree stand if you're really good at setting still. I know a lot of people that still hunt like that old school way and just go set up against a tree, and they're just as successful as a lot of others. Personally, I prefer tree stands. I like to be up high, be able to look down, but really it just boils down to your personal preference.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Up in a tree stand, especially in thick areas, where if you're on the ground, you might not be able to see deer approaching. If you're up in a tree stand, you got a little bit better visibility, and you should be hunting deer in thick areas in most cases. So tree stands definitely a valuable tool to use.
Just so you know that whenever you are hunting out of a blind for big game, they do like highly recommend that you have some orange, like 100 square inches of orange within 15 feet of your blind, just to kind of let other hunters know that there is somebody in that area. So keep that in mind.
And that actually is required. It is a regulation.
Okay, so what are the dates for rifle season? And are there any Sundays in that period? There are. Okay. Go ahead, Courtney, if you got it.
So the rifle season is from November 26th to December 10th. So that November 26th, it starts on a Saturday. That Sunday, November 27th, you are able to hunt.
George asked how many antler deer tags were authorized during the deer firearm season. Bob or Courtney, I don't know that number off the top of my head. All of those deer tag allocations and stuff are usually really sent out in a news release in like right before Antlerless tags go on sale. And you can also check those tag allocations on Huntfish PA as well. Are climbing tree stands permitted on state game lands? Yes.
Yes, they are permitted on state game lands. You just want to make sure that you're not damaging the tree. Obviously, climbers will scrape the bark a little bit, but I don't think that's necessarily considered as damage.
Okay, Philip asks, are you able to lay your own food, typical for that animal, sources as bait in areas to attempt to attract deer to the area that you're hunting or scouting?
No, you can't bait before the season or during the season.
I was gonna say, is there any baiting allowed in special regulations areas? Sorry, Philip, I'm not from a special regulations area, so I have to refer to the digest to get you that. So you see from the digest, it looks like you can bait, but only in special regulations areas and only on private land in special regulations areas. The specifics for that, again, are on page 31 of your Hunting and Trapping Digest. But as a general rule across the state, as like statewide, you cannot unless you are in a special regulations area where it is permitted.
That's correct. And make sure you read page 31, like Courtney said, and that'll give you the specific instructions.
Okay, we have a few more minutes here if anybody has any last minute questions they want to send in. If not, we'll wrap up here. Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna wrap things up and be respectful of everybody's time. We will follow up with you within the next week with answers to any remaining questions or additional resources to help you get started hunting. I know we had a couple questions about the processing links. We will send you a ton of resources and videos on processing and field dressing, along with a map, with our interactive map, so you can locate state game lands near you and other public lands that you can go hunting on. So we're going to provide you with a ton of great information and resources within the next week, along with a link to the recording of today's program. So we will get all of that stuff to you. If you have any additional questions that come up, let's say like tomorrow or the next day, you're like, man, I wish I would have asked that question. Once again, you can always send us questions at mentoredhunting@pa.gov. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have additional questions that you think of in the next couple days, or even, a couple weeks from now. We're always happy to help. And then I just have one last thing. Are you planning on having another webinar scheduled? So we are wrapped up for this year with our Learn to Hunt programs. This year we did a spring turkey Learn to Hunt program. We did squirrels, we did pheasants, and then we did deer archery. And we are finishing up the year with this deer rifle program. There will be a survey that will be sent to you via email about our Learn to Hunt programs here directly. If you have ideas on what other seasons you would like for us to cover, or game species you would like for us to cover in the next year, please let us know in that survey. And yeah, if you want like a part 2, if you want something more in depth, or there's something you wanted to learn more about, please use that survey to let us know those things. We send those surveys out so that we can continually improve these Learn to Hunt programs and make sure that we are supporting you to the best of our ability and helping you along your hunting journey. So please make sure that you fill out that survey if you have ideas of things you would like to see in the future. All right, so I would like to thank Courtney and Bob for sharing their expertise and time with us tonight. We'd also like to thank all of you for joining us and hope you found this program helpful. Please, again, help us improve these programs by doing the survey afterwards. And if you are going out either in the next couple days or during rifle season, good luck, have fun, and hunt safely. Thanks.